Hello and welcome to The Agenda on Politics Social with me, Graham Hughes, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Phil Moorhouse from A Different Bias. How you doing, Phil?
Hello, I'm all right now. On the drugs.
You on the drugs?
I'm on the drugs.
What-
They only
what
make me
drugs are you
tired. I
on?
don't see pink elephants. Codeine and ibuprofen.
Cool. Have you had any hallucinations?
No,
No.
it's fine. I just get tired.
Magic mushrooms, that's what you want. Have you had people tell you what you should, unhelpfully give their advice for what worked for them?
No,
No. Oh, God, you're lucky.
other than go to the doctor again.
Okay. All right. One Angry Pagan straight in there with a big, whopping, massive super chat. £20. Thank you, One Angry Pagan. I'm a Labour member. I've been since 2018. I remain one because I want to agitate for real change and still believe that Labour are the best way to get any vaguely left-wing policies. They are testing my patience now. Mercy for Badger. So thanks very much for that, One Angry Pagan, and we are going to get into that. Everyone else in the chat, big hello to Power to the People, to Diz, to Caliphane and Ren and Billy and Anne and Justin and everyone else. If you would like to join them in the chat, all you have to do is press that subscribe button. We just need 7 more subscribers to hit our target for this month. So if you would care to subscribe, you can add what you think into the chat, but don't be a troll. Anyway, Phil, so anything happened with Labour this week that we want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, so One Angry Pagan. I'll jump on from One Angry Pagan's message because it gets to the meat of it, I think. So the cuts to PIP, for those who don't know yet, what it means is they're restricting eligibility for it. So they're not cutting the value of it for people who get it. They're cutting eligibility, which means that a crap load of people, hundreds of thousands at least, although the government refused to say how many, but they must know how many because they've worked out the maths on it. So they're refusing to say, but certainly many hundreds of thousands of people who need the money because even the Conservatives accepted that it costs them either with extra energy or having to hire someone to do a thing in order for them to do basic daily tasks that the rest of us can do for nothing, such as wash ourselves or prepare food, things like that. And hundreds of thousands of people who currently, because remember, this isn't happening next week or anything, this is happening in like 2 years' time. But the people who will currently get that are not going to get it at all. But at the same time, going to this comment about, Labour testing our patience, this is not a thing that Labour should ever do, ever. But you still have to look at all the rest of it as well. Like I had someone in comments on my channel trying to talk about, they tried to come up with this list of people that Labour are targeting. And I would say, look, there's 2 types of people that can feel genuinely aggrieved that Labour are vulnerable people that are targeting them. That would be young trans people and now disabled people on low incomes. Those are clearly being targeted.
Yeah. In the chat, we've got Gary Arnold saying, I gave up my Labour membership this week. And to be honest, Phil, I got my membership dues of £5.33 or whatever it is a month. And I thought I might cancel my direct debit on this.
So on this, so again, the way I look at it is, so you look at you fixate on one thing, and people who are going to be personally impacted by this, I don't blame them at all. But then you also say, look, you go back over the list. You've got huge improvements to the NHS, would not be happening with anyone else. You've got huge boost to affordable and social housing coming. We've already had a big boost to the minimum wage. We're going to get a bigger boost to the minimum wage over the course of this parliament. We've had a big boost to public sector pay. Again, over the course of this parliament, that will very much be going in the right direction. You've got the workers' rights, the employment rights bill, which is now passed to the House of Lords. That is the biggest shake-up in workers' rights for decades at least, certainly in my lifetime. And you've got several other things as well. It's the largest program of nationalisation that I have ever seen that has existed in my lifetime as well. In fact, possibly the biggest since the 1940s, maybe. And so you look at all of these things and you say, Are you really saying that Labour aren't making things not just a bit better, but a lot better? I mean, for the sake of one thing they're getting badly wrong, the risk is that people say, okay, well, I'm not going to vote for them now.
Well,
Okay,
yes.
so you're going to be one of the people that lets the Tories in next time, who will not, by the way, boost these welfare payments for disabled people. And they will not, by the way, make life any better for trans people, but at the same time, they will make life worse for lots of other vulnerable people that Labour have boosted. Even like the winter fuel payment.
You seem to be putting the blame there, not on Labour, but on the people.
No.
Who
What
aren't
I'm
gonna vote for
saying
them.
is,
But what I'll
No,
say
no.
to that is, you can list all the amazing things that New Labour did, all of them, every single one. You could sit there for 10 minutes and reel them all off. But all anyone remembers is the Iraq War. Unfortunately,
no, that's not the case.
it
No.
is. But
Because
for the average,
they
voter,
they won their most impressive election after the Iraq War.
yeah. But that's
So
all.
that-
But
that-
looking
that was
back,
their biggest win.
That's all that people take away from it.
No. It's all that some people who go on Twitter talk about. What pissed people off ultimately was just the standard rule of politics. They made things a lot better, and then once you make things a lot better, the gains are much smaller, and then people think that it's the usual thing. Oh, the tide, they run out of ideas, and it's like no, it's just that now because a lot of things are fixed, the gains are now much smaller. That's what annoyed people, and just that was what it was. The Iraq War, the people turned against it because it went belly up.
But people
And
turned
it's
against
what
it before
people-
it happened, Phil. There was a
No.
massive protest in London.
There was.
before
But
they deployed the troops.
but my point is that Labour won the biggest. Their in terms of like the efficiency of their vote, they won their most impressive election after it,
in 2005.
years after it. Yeah.
But that was when the Tories were still in disarray. Who did they have as their leader then? Was it William Hay? No, it wasn't he.
No,
Ian
it was
Duncan
Michael
Donuts.
Howard.
Michael
It
Howard.
was
Oh my
Michael
God.
Howard.
Remember him?
But either way, it was still, my point was that isn't what turned them. Apart from anything else, in 2010 they didn't have Tony Blair in charge. He'd gone. He wasn't even in Parliament.
Yeah.
So
And then they
had nothing to do with it.
A
What
rather-
did it was the fact that there was an economic downturn. People didn't feel. Ironically, people were better off than they were in 2005, but they weren't better off than they were in 2008.
There's a chance they would have
That's all
lost
that matters.
anyway. They didn't lose by much in 2010, but I think that's
They
more
would.
to do with
They didn't. Yeah, the
shitness of the
infighting in the
opposition.
campaign.
yeah.
The infighting in the campaign. But the point is, it wasn't the Iraq War that cost Labour.
But it's just
It's-
look, Phil. I'm talking about sort of basic human psychology. You can tell someone 100 nice things, and they'll remember the nasty thing that you said.
Sure,
And
but
this is
but
what's
I'm
gonna
trying to talk here, not to the general population. Like if because I'm going to come to the other side of it. If it were the case that Labour lose the election because of this policy, that is entirely the fault of the Labour leadership. But that's not going to be the case because I'll tell you something. This is popular. So I'm trying to talk now to people. It is popular.
Yes.
I'm trying to
I'm
talk
going to
now
have to
to
concede
people.
that because it was 60% in the last survey in the survey that was done this week saying that they supported cutting benefits.
It's
all the people who
unfortunately the
got on
case. So
benefits.
you've got to think, who are you talking about? Are you talking about the general population? The
Activity
ones
of the
who are gonna,
majority, Phil.
if you're going to talk about key voters, or are you talking about the people we're talking to in this video who are interested in politics and are going to think about it critically? It's two different groups of people. So if you're going to talk about election strategy, we're not talking about the people in the chat right now.
Well, yeah, we've got one angry pagan in the chat agreeing with you, saying all of which is why I remain a party vote member, and it's probably why I will remain a member as
And
well.
the other thing to note as
because
well
then I can
is
feel
that-
like I can influence Labour in some way, and when they make
this-
mistakes, I've got more of a say in Labour just as a Labour member than I ever will with the Tories when they're in charge, because then the Tories are never going to listen to me about any policy that I want.
And the other thing is, this is still not, it doesn't have to happen. It's not guaranteed to happen. It can still be stopped.
Yes. Right to you, MP.
First of all, there is a consultation. I know some people have had issue about the way the consultation presented, but I mean, that's always the way. A government always presents a consultation to try and get evidence for itself. But remember, it didn't work for Jacob Rees-Mogg when he put out a consultation on imperial and metric measures. And the same thing happened. So, oh God, I should have brought the link, shouldn't I? Find the consultation and fill it in. It is a consultation process. Secondly, I'm going to say this, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing because I'm on mixed view about it. Labour have not even attempted to come up with a justification for it other than money. That's my thing. It's not like they've come up with an argument that links this policy with something good. It's not that they've said something spurious or whatever, or using dodgy data. They haven't. I listened to the entire debate. I did not hear Liz Kendall even once make an argument for this policy beyond it's costing us too much. So I mean, we also know that this policy wasn't planned.
It was also
before.
mentioned, Phil, that it wasn't just that it's costing us too much. It's that the trend that we're seeing with more and more people out of work is not sustainable, at least, and that's because of the aging population. And that same 60% that want to see benefits cut, they're the same 60% who hate anyone who sounds foreign. Except when they're
the other thing is,
they marry
a lot of the reasons for these is poor access to healthcare, and especially mental health care.
Yes.
And you will actually reverse a lot of the welfare requirements as soon as you reverse the reasons for some of them happening.
Yeah.
So that goes away. What I'm saying is 2 years' time, the only arguments they actually presented may no longer exist, at which point building pressure on Labour to really pin them down and saying, okay, so are you saying that if the economy improves and your improvements to the NHS and other things like that, and also help, because one of the biggest barriers to disabled people working is, by definition, if you've got significant disabilities, your employer has to make some provision for that. They don't have to massively go out that way, but they're going to have some flexibility with your work, right?
Reasonable adjustments.
And in a market where they struggle for employees, if they're really struggling, an employer is more likely to make those adjustments. Whereas you could argue, so if we strengthen the law to put more of the onus on an employer to make those adjustments, or if we're boosting jobs in general to the point where the employers feel that they have to do that themselves, that will also help. So actually incentivizing employers to make those adjustments will also help get more
lead on
people
that.
with disabilities
I don't
into
think
work.
that's a problem for anyone. I know it's just the right to try, start and work without losing your benefits. Brilliant. We need more of that stuff. We need things akin to the New Deal for musicians, where people can actually start off work without fearing they're going to lose all their benefits and have to do all this shit again to get back to square one. Ivan, thank you very much for the £20 super chat. That's incredibly kind of you. Thank you, sir. If it wasn't for my position on the Executive Committee of Disability Labour, which has accessible meetings online, I might be questioning my membership of the Labour Party. The Green Paper is deliberately very long to read. And let's have a look at the key outline, the key changes, right? This is gleaned from what Liz Kendall said. Tightening eligibility for PIP. And it's going to be based on a points-based system. And you need to get 4 points in a given category in order to qualify.
Plus 12 overall.
Yeah. This doesn't mean you won't get any PIP at all. It's just the level of PIP that you'll get. They're cutting universal credit health element for new claimants.
Yeah, so that also affects people with disabilities, even if they get the PIP.
Yes. They're raising the minimum age for disability top-ups from 18 to 22, which I really disagree with that. They're bringing in an introduction of unemployment insurance to replace the ESA and the JSA. There's a £1 billion annual investment in training and employment support, which I absolutely welcome. And they're scrapping work capability assessments by 2028. Another thing that I welcome. So in there is actually some good stuff, but the headline is this £5 billion cut. And like you say, it might not even happen. Why?
Well,
what is it? What is wrong with Labour comms, Phil? Why can't we spit this out?
I want people to pin them down and say that if the circumstances change by 2027, that this policy will also change. That's what I want them to do now, given that their arguments have been around financing. So if that is no longer the argument in 2027, will you then abandon it? Now, that's not to give people false. At this point, they've announced it, and I'm thinking it will go ahead. But at least pin Labour down on that.
I've got a great way of getting that money, that they need.
Well, yeah, I've got a few.
40 billion. I've got for them.
Yeah, but
if they
no,
want it.
that actually doesn't work. But you can get 8
Do they
billion.
not like money?
It's not that you couldn't join the single market by 2027. But I'll tell you what you could join by 2027, customs union. I've been doing a video on that for today. That's worth 8 billion for the Treasury alone.
Yeah.
It was reckoned before. Now, admittedly, this isn't up to date. This was the calculation before we left. But given that the OBR keeps saying, and as well as everyone else, that the calculations they had before Brexit are still true today, I assume it applies to that as well. And the calculation was that just the customs union alone, leaving that, costs us £25 billion a year,
Yeah.
which, if you translate that into the rate of tax we have at the moment, works out about £8 billion for the Treasury.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just joining the customs union, which the German ambassador yesterday was saying, why don't you do that?
Well, exactly. But we're getting a bit derailed here. One of the things that I find particularly galling about what's happened this week and these announcements is, we'll go back to Labour comms again, but the stress that they have caused disabled people and people who are out of work. Many of the people watching this now are on some kind of benefit. They're on or entitlement, as I like to call it, because it is an entitlement. They're on PIP. And the way that Labour have communicated this, the leaks in the press in the lead up to it, and then people saying, well, wait till we actually know what it is and then we can talk about it. But the amount of worry they've caused, I think, is absolutely disgraceful, and they need calling out on it. And I'm surprised the Lib Dems didn't call them out on it, to be honest with you.
They only get so many questions. I mean, I said from the start, really, what they should have done was to set out their red lines, because I would have thought that one obvious red line is we're not actually going to cut your payments. But unfortunately, the reason they didn't say that is because they were prepared to, even though at the time they weren't planning to. This is obviously because Reeves has lost her headroom. It's which is why it's essentially, this is Rachel Reeves more than Liz Kendall. Kendall still has, I mean, obviously all ministers accept collective responsibility, they don't have to be ministers, but ultimately this has come from the Treasury because that headroom disappeared. This policy would not have been announced if she'd have retained that headroom.
But here's the thing, look, I don't have access to the individual figures about this, but I can see what happens all the time, everywhere in the world, when people are neglected, whether it's through health outcomes or whether it's housing. It costs the state more in the long run. It always costs the state more. If you're saying to kids when they're 18 years old that they can't access what they need to get back into work, or they can't be assessed till they're 22 when they're suffering from some mental health problems, it'll cost you more money down the road every freaking time.
I'll tell you what, I did have. I had quite a nasty little thought, with it. This is pure speculation, by the way, but I just had a last, because I was thinking to myself, just in terms of how this was a very poor economic decision, beyond the impact on the people affected, because you think, so what is PIP often used for? I mean, for some people, it's used if they have extra energy needs to run certain machines, right? Things like that. But for some people, it's because they need like a care worker to help them with certain tasks. So I was thinking to myself initially, so this means that you're basically saying to those people they're not going to be able to pay for that, and then so you have knock-on effects on the jobs for care workers, and then that's when my nasty little thought came in, and I was thinking maybe that's the point. If I was going to be really cynical, because we have a terrible shortage of care workers.
We could get more people to come from other countries to.
Well, this is the problem. Brexit has made that very difficult.
Well, no, it hasn't. We've got more people coming in than ever before. In a way, Brexit's made it easier.
Well, yeah, but not to do jobs, not to do those jobs. The care sector's really struggled since Brexit. So, sorry, that is the door. I am just going to have to pop away.
Okay, no, that's all right, Phil.
You on a little bit.
It's all right. I just knock Phil's mic off for a moment until he gets back. I'll jump into your messages. As for when this is going to happen, we'll talk to Phil about it, but I don't think it's happening overnight. Obviously, this is a green paper, so if you are on PIP at the moment, doesn't necessarily mean that it's all going to stop. Even if it goes through, it's going to take a while, and I think there's going to be enough of a pushback from people like you, people like me, people in the party, MPs in the party who did not sign up for this, who absolutely did not sign up for this. And it's a case of we could do the things that Labour want to do, the sensible stuff in there, and it'll save money. It will absolutely save money in the long run. But I think they're being very, very short-sighted in all this. But like I say, please don't worry yourself unduly. It is just a green paper. It means it's not law at the moment. It's open for consultation. Things are going to change. They haven't even given us the OBR figures, which they're not going to give till next week, are they, Phil? And then the spring statement at the end of the month. Is that next week, the spring statement?
It'll have to be. There's not much left before the new tax year starts.
Yeah. And Power to the People says, I'm quite angry they haven't abolished the sanctions regime or bedroom tax. Has Phil any information on that?
I don't know. No. At the moment, I mean, if they're going to do something like this, I wouldn't necessarily expect it anytime soon. But I mean, I just think at the moment they should be reevaluating all means of boosting trade, which has to include really going to town on getting closer deals with the EU, because we're certainly not going to get much from America. We're going to get net loss from America.
Yes.
Because we're getting hit by the tariffs next month.
Yeah. Which is completely unreasonable because it's just unreasonable anyway. But the fact is that the trade balance between the US and the UK is pretty good. It's almost there. Whereas the trade balance
Trump,
between countries,
this is what also doesn't make sense. Like Trump he's not even consistent with himself. He's using it because he wants to abolish income tax. He thinks that import taxes can replace income tax, but he also understands that if you raise tariffs, you reduce the amount of those goods that will come into America, because he at the same time is using it punitively. So it's like Donald Trump believes two completely contradictory things at once about his own tariffs.
Yeah.
So they will never make sense. We're not even talking about something that is actually America doing something that benefits it and to hell with its allies. It hurts America more than anyone else. But that won't sink through to him. Yeah. He believes too many contradictory things.
Ivan Walker, Ivan Ambrose, thank you very much for the £10 super chat, mate. How is someone like me with autism, learning disabilities, and severe mental health conditions supposed to be able to read and process the very long green paper? Maybe we could do a video on it, going through everything. You could listen to Liz Kendall's speech in Parliament, where she outlines a lot of the stuff that's in the green paper. And also, if you swipe it and put it into ChatGPT and ask for a breakdown, it'll give you a bullet point breakdown of all the different sections in there and what they're proposing. But yeah, it is added difficulties when people have autism, learning disabilities, to engage in this kind of political these policies. And normally, okay, fair enough, some people have needs beyond others. But for this, it's actually affecting the very people who will have difficulty processing all this for one reason or another. And, I feel very personally invested in this because my partner's because my partner's deaf. She doesn't get PIP or anything like that. She doesn't need it. But if she did need it, I would be really worried right now. I'd be really worried about the direction that Labour are taking us. And this is where they try and save the money from. We can talk about all day about all the different things Labour could do to raise revenue for the Chancellor. Cutting benefits for disabled people. It would never come up. Like, we wouldn't even think of it. Like, it's just fuck all anyway. Another super chat come in from Nova510. Thank you very much. PIP doesn't go to care workers or companies. The council pays for them. PIP is used for incentivizing people to help you. Partner works in care. Yeah, a lot of people who get PIP are in employment. We got some kickback for Phil here. Poor Phil. Phil's argument is ridiculous, says Clupid Bloverscope. Why would I vote for a party that's going to cut my benefits and take away my rights as a trans person? Tories are worse, not voting for them either.
Yes, but you're voting in like, it depends on the constituency we're in. If you're in a constituency between Labour and the Conservatives, whether you vote for one or the other, or vote for someone else, or don't vote at all, you are actually voting. And I know you may not rationalise it in your own way, but you are, because it is between the Conservatives and Labour. It's really that simple. It's between the Conservatives and Labour. And of course, you're absolutely free to blame Labour if they lose your vote. That's entirely your prerogative. But the practical result is that if Labour don't win, the Conservatives win. Like, someone forms a government. At the end of everything, someone forms a government. That government is either one that has done this, but at the same time is also boosting housing, NHS provision, education, workers' rights, pay, things like that. Or you go for the one. Remember, the Conservatives were cutting benefits by even more. It's not just that they would have done this as well. They had already planned to cut benefits. That was going to go ahead in autumn. And Labour actually blocked it. And as I said at the time, if Labour were even thinking at the time of doing this, they were obviously prepared to do it. They must have discussed it and were prepared to. But if they were actively thinking about it, they would have just not. They'd have just let it go through. They let other things go through. There were other things that they allowed to go through.
Aside from a handful of by-elections, there's going to be no way of changing the government until 2029. So until then, if people write to Labour and say, "I voted for you," right to their
yes,
and this is I'm not going to vote for you in the local elections.
You can certainly do that. Or you can even say the general election. You can certainly write to a MP.
And I really recommend you do that if you have a Labour MP. Honestly, the vast majority of them are all right, and you'll get a response. But the more pressure the constituents put on their MPs, the more this green paper will be steered in a direction that doesn't.
Again, sorry, I'm going to have to address Azina's point there, because you're completely misunderstanding me. I'm not blaming the people. If Labour lose the next election because of this, that is the Labour leadership's fault. What I'm telling you is that Labour are not going to lose the next election because of this. What I'm telling you is that your neighbours approve of this policy. So what we actually need to do is to make sure that Labour can, you've got to remember, I am so far on the left that 80% of what Labour will ever do is not what I think is the best policy to do. Like, I'm used to that. That's my life. Because when you're very far to the left, as I am, you've got one of three ways of looking at politics. You either realise that most of the people living around you do not believe what you do, so you try to come to as good an accord as you can with them for the best possible outcome, or you believe that you delude yourself into thinking that your neighbours are all of the same mind as you are, and then you're just angry at the world for the rest of your life because they're actually not. Or third, you support armed revolution so that you can turn Britain into a Stalinist communist utopia. It's one of those three. So I am used to always utopia. Having to.
That'll be quite the thing.
I am always having to used to this. So I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. If Labour lose your vote, that's their fault. What I am saying is, if you want to pursue practical change, you have to think in terms of the way the world is. And the way the world is, it approves of cuts to things like foreign aid, even though that is short-sighted. It approves of things like cuts to anything to do with the DWP, even pensions. Like the winter fuel allowance was popular, not amongst people of pensionable age, but it was popular amongst everyone else. And the thing about anything to do with benefits is
popular or disinterested?
Popular. No, popular.
So people are like, screw them. Stupid old people. Wow.
Basically, yeah.
What a horrible country we live in.
Well, it's just self-interested. I wouldn't mind so much if people actually knew what their own self-interest was. But it is self-interest. So what you have to actually... Now, if you leave Labour, then what you do... Because what we need to do is to say to Labour... Okay, this policy is a good policy. Yes. It's not a popular policy. Raising benefit. I mean, some of the things that Liz Kendall announced this week were boosts to benefits for some people. That's not popular either, but they've done it because it's not unpopular. So what you need to be able to do is to try and explain to Labour how a particular policy is useful, which is why it's always better to make the economic argument,
Right.
and doesn't cost them votes. Because it is also true that although a lot of people approve of cuts to benefits, like they approve more of benefits to themselves. So if you can get them to lean on the benefits to themselves, which is why I would be in favour of, right now, looking at the customs union, even though that would be a breach of the manifesto. As far as I'm concerned, the PIP thing was a breach of the manifesto because it says in their manifesto, I'll read the line, a little bit vague, I admit it, it says, we believe the work capability assessment is not work and needs to be reformed. So, okay, they've done that bit, or replaced alongside a proper plan to support disabled people to work. Well, this impedes disabled people's access to work.
Yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, they're going against the an obvious interpretation of the manifesto. Yeah. So if they're going to do that anyway, why don't they just say to people, well, okay, do you know what? Circumstances have changed. We didn't know we were going to be in the middle of a geopolitical trade war.
So let's rejoin the single
market. If we join the customs union, we can, which no one knows what it is anyway, we could have 8 billion quid a year in the treasury, and we wouldn't have to make these bloody cuts.
Exactly. Okay, we had a stream of super chats come in. Thank you so much to everyone. First of all, Ivan Ambrose there saying it's now more urgent than ever for PR. Again, yeah, I'm all for PR. Obviously, Phil is as well. You're part of a group, aren't you, in Labour that are pushing for PR?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to happen before the next election.
Oh, it's certainly not going to happen.
It's not popular amongst people. That most people don't
care. It's not
care.
popular amongst Labour, who have this stupid idea it helps Nigel Farage when actually no, it sinks Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
But that's because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
That's my head in.
Alistair Kerr, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. To be honest, the anger is growing faster than I've seen in the past. Labour are not the party people voted for. Where's the change? None.
I literally reeled out the change at the start.
So yeah, go back and listen to Phil's list of what he feels has changed since the election.
Some of it has changed right now.
Yeah, One Angry Pagan, £5 super chat. Could Starmer be trying to imitate the success of Social Democrats in Denmark? Centre-right socially, centre-left economically?
I mean, maybe it's worth bearing in mind that although Denmark has a left-wing government, it is very anti-immigration. So, I mean, that's the thing. Left is essentially about economics. It's not about social policy. It is possible, but I have to say, we have a very different outlook to those in Denmark.
Yeah.
Because in Denmark, the left-wing government is hideously anti-immigration.
Yeah. Well, David Moxham says sometimes you have to end up voting for the least bad option. I voted for Sadiq Khan despite you, Les, and being disabled because he was the least bad option. Yeah, absolutely. What was that? Lawrence Fox? And that was his name.
I mean, Count Binface beat Lawrence Fox. To be fair, I don't think it was it was that loony, wasn't it? I've forgotten her name now. That Conservative candidate.
Oh God, the woman.
Liz. No.
Yeah, I know the one.
I've blotted her out of my memory now. Susie, someone. Yeah, I think
Susie,
that's right.
Thank you very much to Katrina Tam for the £10 super chat. It's really generous. Thank you. I'm very lucky that I do have 4 points in multiple areas for my PIP daily living. But if they did stop my PIP, I'm not sure what I'll do. God only knows how people affected will cope. Again, Phil, it's causing loads of people.
It is because there's loads of people
stress for no bloody reason at the moment because it's still.
Unfortunately, I'm going to say because they've said they want to cut costs. So unless the economic situation does look better at the point at which the decision is made,
well, this is
and given Trump's behaviour,
this is something I want to come to in a moment. First of all,
there are loads of people with three
Alistair. Again, they're not benefits; they're entitlements, as I've been saying. But yeah, we're talking about how people feel, Phil. There was a survey that came out this week that showed that the majority of people don't feel better off now that Labour are in power.
How would they? Because it's like the budget has still to be implemented. That don't get implemented for 2 more weeks. And even then, it's not like it's an overnight thing. And almost none of the legislation's been passed, and then it's still got to be implemented, so they wouldn't. But actually, in one way, they will. If they have any sort of dealings with the NHS, that actually is noticeably better now. I mean, you can see it I mean, there's been lots of reports on just how it's got better, but I can even say just from my own thing. I mean, last Friday I had to try and get a doctor's appointment, and I got one straight away. That's not happened for a while.
Yeah, well, I've been waiting for months and months and months for my ADHD assessment, and I finally got it. Also, my titration has happened a lot quicker than it was supposed to, which is fantastic. For Tan, she's already on a titration, which wouldn't have happened if the Tories were still in. Susan Hall was the name of the woman.
Oh, yeah,
Tory candidate for London Mayor, awful woman. God, she was awful. Chris says, I will lose my PIP based on this 4 point in one activity bullshit. Well, this is the thing, like, we don't know what the actual setup of this is going to be, because it's supposed to be on your worst day. So, dressing yourself. If you're suffering from depression on your worst day, you're not going to get out of bed. So can you dress yourself? No. But most of the time you can. It just seems a daft system.
It's a system, right? It's a system, or the new system, the new changes. Like I said, Labour have linked it to cost. They haven't tried to make any justification. This isn't even like when the Tories say, "Oh, what we need to do is cut benefits to encourage people to get a job because it's obviously too cushy on benefits." They haven't tried anything like that, which would be silly anyway because it's not an out of work benefit anyway. But they haven't tried anything. Like, there isn't even, and I've been constantly trying to find, so what is the argument? How do I have an argument with you when you're not making any arguments? It's purely about cost. Okay. So I think that if they still need to make,
you're not making them sound much better here, Phil.
Well, I'm sorry, but politics is like that. That's obviously what's happened. No Labour government should ever even think about going here, and they have done. So straight away, there's no way of trying to even imagine some noble purpose here because they haven't even tried to make one. It's purely about cost cutting.
Well, what's going on here,
the only way this stops, and this is the way it stops, is if the pressure on cost cutting eases and the pressure on these changes intensify. So there needs to be, people need to fill in the consultation. Get together with other people to go through it and decide on some points that you might otherwise miss even. But everyone needs to go through the consultation, encourage others to fill it out as well. Make sure this ends up being as unpopular as Jacob Rees-Mogg's consultation on imperial measures. Make sure that, and just hope that the economic situation, despite Trump's throwing his weight around, does improve things.
Okay, but let's talk about this then. Let's talk about who's advising Labour to do these things. You're saying this is something that Labour should never do, and I agree with you. I think most of the people in the chat agree with you. Even if people are still pro Labour, they're still kind of like, what the hell are they thinking?
I mean, Labour's very tribal, as you know. There's not a single tribe in Labour that's trying to justify this. They're all from the sort of centre to the communist wing. They're all going,
to your MP right now would
Labour
be a really good idea. I know we keep saying this on this channel, like write to your MP, but it does make a difference. Someone said earlier that you can't change Labour from within. Yes, you absolutely can, in a way that you cannot change the Tories no matter what. Tories, you're locked in, you're on the roller coaster, off you pop. Next 14 years, you get no say. But with Labour, at least they have to listen. They do listen to their constituents, even if you're not a Labour member. They will get back to you.
Should do. There's the odd one that doesn't. Well, they should.
Well, if they don't get back to you, let us know on this channel, and we'll kick up a fuss. But yeah, who's advising them, Phil? Who's telling them this?
Well, there's loads of people advising them. Obviously, this will ultimately have come from the Treasury. Liz Kendall was trying to make the argument. It'll partly also be the OBR. Liz Kendall was trying to make the argument that the investments they were making in work support, like supporting people into work, as well as like improvements to the NHS, would actually naturally reduce the welfare bill over time. But the OBR won't go along with it. They maybe reasonably
poverty breeds
said
poverty.
That they can't. Yeah.
Someone was pointing out 5 billion not given in benefits or entitlements means 5 billion not going into local economies. It's not like the people who are on those entitlements are spending their money on luxury yachts in Monaco.
Yeah, this is precisely it. But at the same time, if the ABR say we can't quantify the benefits of these back to work schemes, then that is that, it's computer says no time. But nonetheless, and I appreciate that headroom went, but it would actually have been better for Reeves to have applied some levy, or like, would there have been, could it have been compensated by, because this won't be the end of it, by the way, we've still got the actual pissing budget statement to come. Would there,
Next week's agenda.
she's got the option at the moment, and people and investors, because I also get, there's like lots of things that people don't think about. The key thing is about how investors react on the markets. You can't afford a Liz Truss, right? But if you set defence investment outside of the fiscal rules, and investors are up for that because they know that investing in European defence is going to be quite good over the next few years. Something like that, some bonds or something like that to have raised some revenue, because we've already had to commit to boosting defence spending anyway.
Yes.
There
the Chris
must
C
have
is in the
been.
chat. He's just left the super chat. Chris C makes a really good point. If this is about cost, then tax the wealthy. Don't attack the vulnerable. It is that simple. I'm sick of the vulnerable taking the brunt of cuts. And we've had this in 2010.
The reason, yes, we have. The
Thanks for
reason,
super
of
chat, by the way,
course,
mate.
the reason, of course, is that if poor people are taxed more, they pay those taxes. If rich people are taxed more, they move the money out and they pay even less tax. So when, for example, Dawn Butler, it's quite a popular one, and she said about the 2% levy on wealth above 10 million, that will, I guarantee that there are certain taxes for the wealthy that could well work. That is one I guarantee will not work. That will actually result in more cuts. Yeah. Because all someone has to do, first of all, think about the wealth you're talking about. So straight away, you'll have farmers up in arms again because I'll have to sell some of my land. Or you'll have landlords saying, okay, well, I'm going to have to sell one of my houses then and kick a family out. So you'd then have to have exemptions for stuff like that. So you're talking about wealth that's easily liquidated, right? But if it's easily liquidated, it's easily shifted to another country. Yeah. You just move it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the reality of some of these ideas. They won't work because they work on the basis.
If it's liquid money, they can move it abroad, but you can't move property. If you've got a business set up here, like one of the things that Tesco should be doing is what the government should be forcing Tesco to do is pay a living wage, and then we as taxpayers don't need to pay top ups effectively to people's wages.
I see what I mean. In terms of that, well, they are moving towards that situation. I mean, that's where it was going under the last Labour government. It's where it'll go under this Labour government. You can't do it overnight because you will end up then just shedding a load of jobs, and they'll just get in a shitload more self-checkouts. That's what will happen. Yeah. Or they'll do what Amazon do and ask to buy their robots to stock the shelves.
Yeah, but self-checkouts though are a false economy for these companies because they think, oh, we can pay people less. They get loads more stuff robbed.
No, I think they're all right. Because they have the cameras, I think, are fairly effective. Like the trouble I get if it doesn't like what I've put in the bag. But the
unexpected item. Phil, before we go on, we've got a couple of super chats to go through. First of all, One Angry Pagan, thank you very much, sir. You're very kind. Labour are trying to deal with multilateral problems. Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Ivan Ambrose, £5 super chat. It is a fact that Labour members have more influence and rights than Tory members, which I completely agree with. And that's why I'm, at the moment, staying in the tent, pissing out, rather than outside the tent pissing in. But at the same time, I feel, yeah, obviously we've talked about it, but I feel the way that Labour go about communicating with MPs, their own MPs, their members, their base, their voters, and the country at large is absolutely fucking dreadful. They need to sort it out.
Davina is just saying there 10% tax on billionaires would raise 17.9 billion. No, it'll raise zero. It'll actually raise negative. I'm telling you, they'll move it. And the other thing it'll do is it'll just stop them. It'll stop investment. And that's the reality. And I know how galling it is. It's particularly galling to me when you can have rich people do that. But that is the reality. People wave their arms around. Oh, just do this thing. It'd be easy. If it was that easy, they would actually do it. They would do it. It's because it's not. They just move it. You don't seem to understand how easy it is to move money around these days. It's a piece of piss.
That's why we need a property tax or some kind of land tax.
We need land tax. Yes, that's what you have to do. We should really look at land tax because you cannot hide land.
Also,
and then you can.
I've got a question. right? Every time it's brought up in Parliament that there's 300 billion pounds of Russian money that's been frozen in banks, in European banks. Assets, right?
Yeah.
Every time it's brought up, Keir Starmer says, it's quite a complex thing to take all that money.
Because genuinely,
what's the story there?
So for us, we're in favour of it. Those who are, but we want to act in concert with Europe, and in France, Germany, and the European Central Bank are opposed to it. And the reason is because there are other dodgy countries around the world who invest in Europe, and if they worry that if they seize those assets and just hand them over to Ukraine, that other sort of dodgy characters around the world who invest a lot of money will think, hang on a minute, they may on some pretext freeze our assets in the future because we are, after all, incredibly dodgy. So it would hurt investment. So that's the reason why France, Germany, and the ECB are a bit worried about it, because of the potential to hurt investment.
Very disheartening.
Because most of the world, let's be honest, is dodgy.
Yes, it is.
So by definition, foreign inward investment has come probably from a dodgy source. Almost all wealth is dodgy.
Yeah. Chris C, thank you very much for the super chat. People are being very generous today, although it is quite a heated discussion obviously going on in the chat. Please, everyone, can you try and stay civil? And no one, I don't want any ad hominem attacks. If I spot any in the chat, and obviously I can't read every message, but if I spot any in the chat, I will mute you or boot you. Chris C, thank you very much for the super chat. We should charge VAT on financial services as it's the wealthy that use them the most.
Yeah, that do you know what? That was a massive surprise to me when I found out we don't even do that. So like, you pay VAT on legal services.
Yeah.
And you don't. So I know that, having had to have hired lawyers in the past. So, but you don't on financial services, and that is for me, that is a bit of a madness. Again, inevitably, because that's such an obvious source of revenue, there will be some argument, whether valid or not, that it'll hurt investment somehow, I suspect. I suspect a lot of the policies that are coming out from the Treasury are born of the fact we have a very fragile economy, and they don't want to risk a situation where something in theory should raise 3 billion but actually cost you $500 million, because then you've got to make even more cuts. I actually think there's a sort of timidity here. Now, I do know that despite what people may think of Rachel Reeves at the moment, before the election, she was really going to town trying to speak to as many experts as she could on how you actually tackle tax avoidance. Because when I sort of talk about some of the schemes to tax the rich, ultimately, the problem is that they just use a tax avoidance scheme to get out of it. So it's clear that, and they even talked about it in the manifesto, it's clear that they are trying to work on ways of making it harder for people to do that, which means that in the future we could be looking at more tax on the wealthy. But I still fall back on the one type of wealth that you cannot just hide in a tax avoidance scheme is land,
which is what Gary Stevenson mentions quite a lot. He says, tangible assets in this. I've seen buildings, land.
I've seen a Nobel Prize winning economist say, in fact, several actually, saying so. I mean, this is the thing. You cannot.
I just want to make a disclaimer that the Nobel Prize for Economics is a joke award. It's a participation trophy.
Nonsense. I haven't got one. Neither has Gary. But
the real one is for mathematics.
There isn't actually a Nobel Prize for mathematics, just so you know. So yeah, if you get a Nobel Prize for maths, you're actually getting it for either physics or economics, depending on its application.
How mad! I mean, physics are fair enough. I don't want to offend the physician. The physician? Physicist. I don't want to offend Dr. Phil. Oh no, that's an awful name. Better not call you that. Hey, we've got a couple of super chats before we go on. Ivan Ambrose, £5 super chat, but there are some millionaires and billionaires in the UK who are desperate to pay more tax. Yeah, patriotic millionaires UK. You can look them up. They're a group of millionaires who are saying, yes, please tax us more. But
unfortunately, their colleagues will go, we'll just use a tax avoidance scheme.
Yeah. And One Angry Pagan says, £2. Thank you very much. Says, super chat, just like evolution, democracies are a messy process. Yes, because they're a reflection of humans, and humans are messy, silly creatures who make mistakes.
But it would be helped enormously if we had better media.
Yes, it would. Anyway, go on. Tell us about this Nobel Prize winning economist.
I was just simply saying that even Nobel Prize winning economists are saying that land tax is the way to go. You cannot move Hertfordshire to the Cayman Islands, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can adapt it. You can say, oh, you're using this land for farming. Oh, it should attract a very low rate because that's useful. Oh, you're using this. And again, you do it for like everyone. So like a homeowner, it would be like, okay, this is your primary residence. So you pay, and you get rid of council tax. You replace council tax with it. You're using this as your primary residence. So you pay a relatively modest amount on it. Oh, you're using this is a second home. Yeah, you're paying a much higher rate for that. You don't need a second home. And oh, you're using this as a grouse moor. Yeah, you're going to be paying through the nose for that.
But also,
or a golf
let's have
course.
a system, Phil, where you can pay more if you want to, and we celebrate.
You
that
always
fact.
can. You always can. That's easy. The problem is, and that's always the argument that the bullshitters say when you've got like these patriotic millionaires. Well, why don't you just pay more money? You could do that yourself. It's like, yeah, but there's not enough of them. What they're saying is it's the collective impact of everyone doing it. So no, anyone can always at any time. And in fact, this is one of the arguments that very wealthy people use to justify their tax dodging. Oh, the government don't spend it on proper things, so I'm building this library. You see, that's a proper use of it. So, philanthropy, right? Yeah. They use it as an excuse to dodge taxes by saying, well, I'm actually paying for a public service. I'm just making sure it gets spent on something suitable because the government waste it. It's like, no, we vote for the government. So even though some, very rich people do genuinely pay money out, and I would describe it as philanthropy, quite a lot of the time, it's just a justification. I'll build this thing for $1 million and I'll dodge 10 million in taxes. So, no.
Yeah. But also, I mean, the celebration of people who, instead of having a rich list, Times rich list, have an award ceremony where the person who paid the most tax in the country gets a fucking gong. Give him a little plastic statue that's been gilded in gold and go, here you go.
The problem then is some of the people who pay the most tax are some of the biggest tax dodgers. They just pay the most because they have such shitloads. They make such shitloads of money. James Dyson is one of the biggest taxpayers, or has been. I don't know these days since he moved to Singapore. But he has been one of the biggest taxpayers, but he's also a big tax dodger. So no, that doesn't work.
Oh.
Just tax land. For Christ's sake, tax land.
Tax them. SG, thank you very much for the super chat. What's the difference between an economist and a confused old man with Alzheimer's? The economist is the one with the calculator. Oh, harsh, SG, harsh.
Well, look, economics is very much like statistics. There's a lot of people, because it's quite political, and a lot of people are political. It's something that a lot of people think they understand.
But if anyone did, they'll make a killing on the stock market, and they don't.
A lot of them do. I think a lot of the top economists are actually quite wealthy.
Yeah, but they don't. I mean, they're not the richest people.
I don't think there are any poor economists. Like, if anyone's an economist who says they're an economist and they're poor, they're not an economist. They're not.
Maybe they're all just nepo babies, living off their daddy's money. Have you ever thought of that?
I think quite a lot of them are just people on the news.
But one of the other things you're talking about, sort of wealth tax, another thing that can't really be moved is if companies have shops and products that they sell in this country. And I do find it maddening when you got someone like News International, which publishes the Times, publishes the Sun, the News of the World, and all that. And that for the first 30 years before it got taken away in different subsidiaries or whatever happened to it, it didn't pay anything in corporation tax, not a single penny in corporation tax.
The thing is as well, like, when you're talking, I was talking yesterday on my channel about the fact that the anti-Musk laws might be coming this year, which is a lot sooner than I expected.
Good.
But one of the ideas, it does see, in theory, hypothetically for me, it doesn't go far enough in terms of foreign donations, but it would absolutely stop Musk, because one idea being floated around at the moment is to make it so that if you donate, like if a foreigner donates into British politics through a UK, they can only do it through a UK company, but also that UK company has to make enough profits to be able to afford the donation. Now that would definitely stop Musk, because he claims he doesn't make any, like in most years, even Tesla doesn't post profits.
Yeah, because they don't
Which
sell
seems a
any
bit-
cars.
Which
They don't sell any cars.
we're the ones bastard buying them. Like the
I
sales
know.
have collapsed in Europe, and we're bloody
We're
buying
still
them
buying them. I mean,
because we
people.
think that we think they're the best. And it's like I'm not a car expert. They feature strongly in lists. I get that they're still a good electric car.
They haven't had any
they're not the
updates.
best.
I mean, they haven't had a new model. They're still selling the car from 2013.
What about the new swastikas coming out? Was it the Y model or something? Tesla Y or something?
There's the S, the 3.
There is a
the
new
X
one
and
coming
Y
out.
because it spells sexy. Because honestly,
I see.
he's a child.
Oh, he
He's
is a child.
film.
Yeah, he's absolutely a child. But the point is that, this is a company that clearly makes sales and yet posts no profits.
Yep.
And that's how they're going to screw him and stop him. I mean, he might never have wanted to donate, but just it gets rid of the threat. And
It's all a big tax
you
dodge.
have these. Yeah, you have these companies that like big oil companies that some years go, oh, sorry, we didn't make any profit. What do you mean you didn't make any bastard profit?
I think
You
we
own the
need to
bastard
have
world.
a big clamp down on loans, right? So first of all, for people at our end of the spectrum, payday loan companies, those loan sharks need to be shut down immediately. And
I think, to be fair, the Tories did clamp down a lot on that, didn't they?
did. Because but still, there's a lot of debt going around, and these debt brokers are buying this debt for a fraction of what it's worth, and then sending the bailiffs around to steal people's what little possessions they have. But then at the other end of it, you've got people like Musk and Trump and others who don't earn any money because all they do is they go to a bank once a year and say, "Can I borrow 12 million?" And that's their living costs.
Yeah, Musk. I think I'm right in saying last year Musk didn't pay any taxes in the United States.
No,
None. How does the richest man in the world not pay any tax?
And his companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, all got massive subsidies from the American taxpayer.
Yeah.
To the tune of billions.
Yeah, because I do so badly.
Biggest
Not only
scrounge
can I
there
not
is.
pay tax, I actually need some benefits, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those are the real scroungers of the benefit system. It's rich people.
Yes. And they're the real miserable people as well. I mean, you very rarely meet a happy rich person. I'll tell you a little story.
I don't know. There are some.
One of my friends is a captain on boats, and once he was captaining a super yacht, which was taking a trip around the Indian Ocean somewhere, and it was owned by a very famous Irish rock star. I'm not saying who.
Oh yeah.
And
Bono or The Edge.
They had a very famous 1960s musician on board as a guest. And the conversation turned to tax. And this Irish pop star said, I don't pay any tax because I don't agree with where it's being spent.
Yeah, you
And
see, that's the usual thing.
because Ireland at the time had an exemption for artists, even though this guy was possibly the richest person in Ireland.
Yeah.
You probably guess who it was, but I'm not saying
I
anything.
know.
But he said, I don't agree with paying tax. This is someone who has done so well out the system, not someone who's a nepo baby, not someone who was born into wealth, done so well out of that system, and then got to the end and gone, I don't agree with how that money's being spent. I should decide unilaterally, so I'm going to pay as little or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before, that's the justification for like building a library or something. So they can, that's what they do to sleep at night.
They
say,
convinced the 60s rock star to get the same accountant so they could...
Yeah. And it's how they justify it. I mean, what needs to happen with something like that is you need an international... Because there was a time where even like the Republicans in America used to tax the wealthy properly. The problem is these days is they don't even have to move. You always get things when Labour come in, I'm going to millionaires, I'm going to leave the country. Like that Pimlico plumber, what's his face? The one who looks like Rod Stewart.
Charlie Mullins.
Charlie Mullins. So he said he was going to leave. He's not going to leave. Do you know what he's going to do now? He's going to be Reform UK candidate somewhere.
He used to be hugely anti-Brexit. I met him. I met him once when we were doing the Three Blokes in the Pub series, and he was very, very much against Brexit, and then he's just completely turned 180.
I mean, people do that. I've seen a lot of people firsthand fall down rabbit holes in the last 10 years. But that's what they do. They'll justify it. They'll just say, well, I don't agree with the way it's been spent, therefore. But it's like, it's not up to you, mate. these are the people we elect to spend it. Now, if they don't do a good job, we'll vote them out. Hopefully, we'll vote them out next time. But it's not up to you to decide. But there was a time when even Republicans taxed the wealthy properly. But these days, it's like they'll just move the money. They don't have to leave. They don't have to leave the country. They just move the money somewhere else.
When Amazon sells something to you, you have to pay the VAT. They don't pay the VAT on your behalf. They're not out there to help. So we're paying 25% extra on everything that we
20.
buy off Amazon. So yeah, 20.
20. It's not quite 25 yet.
And yet they're paying a fraction of what they should in corporation fees.
Yeah.
And what are small
something
companies
like that
supposed to do? All these mad capitalist scumbags, all these libertarians, like, it's a level playing field. How is it a level playing field?
No, exactly. It's
when
not.
your mum and dad corner shop are struggling, and then this big, and they have to pay all their taxes. They have to employ someone to
exactly, and that's the thing, you see, because if you're not rich enough to just shift your assets abroad or somehow pretend that some money you spent was an investment and therefore reduces your profits to like negative or something, like you're a company becking loads of money and yet somehow you're always spending more on investment that you're bringing in. You can't do that as a small business. I mean, you're just fiddling it. So the only fiddles you get with small businesses are like the so-called white van tax problem, whereby some tradesmen will ask for cash so they don't have to run it through their books.
Yeah.
Or to stay below and they justify it to themselves by, if they can stay below the VAT threshold, then they can claim they don't have to charge their customers as much.
Yeah. But also there's no comeback, which is the problem with that. If you pay cash and you don't get a receipt, and the job's not very good. So it's always a bit dodgy.
It is very dodgy, yeah.
One Angry Pagan, thank you much for the £5 super chat. It's like Labour are caught between the... One Angry Pagan loves to put words up that I can't pronounce. Chicxulub meteorite on one side and the Deccan Traps caldera on the other, and are making panic choices.
Oh, if you want to see them making panic choices,
the paleontologists in the chat there. The geologists.
You wait for the Runcorn by-election, because we saw after they surprisingly lost the Boris Johnson's obviously Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election, they went into proper panic mode there. They just went mental. Yeah. You watch them if they lose Runcorn. We'll do the same thing, won't they?
Yeah.
I'm sort of hoping Reform UK's infighting will cause a problem there, but I'm not at all sure. And then someone in my own stream earlier this week had a very nasty thought. What if George Galloway pops up? I actually don't know who would pull more votes off, Reform UK or Labour.
I'd rather he didn't.
I'd rather he just pissed off altogether. Go back to Russia, he likes it there.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, right. So I'm going to go off and learn how to pronounce ancient Mexican meteor craters. I'll be back at 6:30 tonight for a special early edition of the Friday Night Social, because I'm going out later on. So it'll be from 6:30 till 7:30. It'll be a shorter show. And also Mike's going to be joining us, Mike Dix, and he's been getting a lot more treatment for his cancer this week, and he's absolutely knackered, so he doesn't want to do a late night anyway. So this was a bit of a compromise measure, which is cool. So please join us for that at 6:30 tonight, 6:30 till 7:30. And then we'll shunt you all over to go and watch A. Thompson and other disappointments on his channel. So thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for all your lovely messages. Big shout out to Phil for lending us his expertise on all his matters. I don't know. Anyway, you're the physicist. You tell me. But thanks very much for the super chats. Really appreciate it. If you could do us one thing before you go, if you could just hit that like button, just a little thumb under the stream, under the picture, and that will really, really help with our analytics. Analytics? No,
sure. Why not?
That's not the right word, is it? That'll really help with our algorithm. Al Gore and his rhythm. Oh, we've got another super chat coming from Ivan Ambrose. Thank you. £10 super chat. My dad had his building business since 1987. He's 67 and still working 6 days a week with a heart condition and diabetes. So that's so not right either. Oh, mate, we could do a whole episode on retirement, pensions, the fact that people are not going to be able to retire in the future. My mum's 75. She's still working full time. Anyway, chat. You all stay safe and have a great weekend. All, says Alistair. Yeah, if I don't see you tonight, if I don't see you later at 6:30 for the Friday night social, I'll see. Have a fantastic weekend, and until next time, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye. Bye.